Hey YouTubers, I thought I would do a quick update. I actually have footage. I'm working on a video. Well, I'm not working on the video. I've got footage. I've got photos. Um, I will be working on a video. The video is comparison of the Zeiss 55mm f1.8 for the Sony A7 line of cameras against a few other lenses. I didn't test all of my 50mm lenses, but I did a good sampling. I don't have adapters for everything. Believe it or not, I've got 6 or 7 50mm lenses. Anyway, that video I think you'll find fairly interesting if you're into that sort of thing. And I'll be working on it. I just got to do the editing and well, the script and the editing and so forth. So that'll be coming hopefully this weekend. So I'm putting it off by doing this video. And in this video, I'm just going to talk a bit about things that have been going on. First off, I said a few months ago that I needed to move off of aperture because Apple has discontinued support of it. That really bummed me out. I mentioned that I've been using it since version 1, I think, or had been using it since that point. And so I had a lot of experience with it. It was second nature, muscle memory, all that stuff. With them dropping support, I needed to find something else. And so I was looking at Capture One and Lightroom. Long story short, basically, I now own the world's most expensive copy of Lightroom. That's because I thought I liked Capture One better. It was closer to the aperture editing experience. It wasn't as modal. Lightroom is kind of modal. You're in library mode or develop mode, and that just seems kind of artificial to me. And I thought Capture One did that better, but it turns out Capture One has some incredibly bad, I guess, missing features. I don't know any other way to say it, or poorly implemented features. It's not a very strong cataloging tool, and it has a bit of a history where it came from only being a raw management tool, or not even management, a raw editing tool. And they've added in the sort of asset management aspects to it. And it's just not there yet. I mean, keywording, I thought for sure I had something wrong. I thought I was misunderstanding how it worked. But no, it's just basically not usable. It's tacked on like an afterthought. And unfortunately, I didn't really discover that until after I went ahead and purchased it. And it sounds stupid, but that's how it worked out. And my trial period was ending, and I felt the need to decide, and so I went with Capture One. And the first real set of photos I tried to manage in it, I was just like, screw this thing. I can't believe it. So on to Lightroom, which I had used before in the past when I did the Leica monochrome review, because it would handle the files. So anyway, yeah, I'm a Creative Cloud subscriber. I'm using the photographer level. And it's working out fine. I'm getting used to it. It's fairly intuitive, so I'm not having any real trouble with it. And I'm enjoying it just fine, and you'll see that in the 50mm lens comparison when I get to it. Next item. Oh, this is exciting for me anyway. I don't know about you. I've been a Mac user for 13 years or so. I guess since around the time that OS X was released, a little after the first release of OS X. And so I'm a pretty long time Mac user. I'm a Unix guy. If you don't know what that is, that's fine. It's just a computer operating system. So OS X always seemed to me to be the perfect combination of consumer features and programmer features. So I've been using it a long time. As I said, I started with a mirrored drive door G4 tower, which was a great machine. What an amazing design that machine had. But when I started using I wanted to start using a Mac at work, I got a MacBook Pro, and I think I got my first one in 2004. So I've been using those for about 10 years. I've had, I guess, 4 of them over that 10-year period. My current one is a late 2011 model, and so that's a little old for me. I generally was upgrading about every 2 years. And I'm starting to feel it. I did put a SSD in it, a terabyte SSD in it, maybe 6 months ago or so, maybe 9. And that made a difference. It made it a little snappier. But the fans come on anytime I'm editing video, or you know, sometimes when I'm manipulating photos. So it's a little bit long in the tooth for the software I'm running. So I spent this long time searching for what was going to be the replacement for this MacBook Pro that I've had for the last 4 years. I considered everything. Apple has really kind of gotten into this situation where I'm a little pissed at them. They're really focusing on miniaturizing things, making things thin, but they're also making them essentially unrepairable and unexpandable, like the laptops. You've got to buy the hard drive you think you'll need and the memory you think you'll need. You can't upgrade that stuff in the laptops anymore. So that's bad, and that kind of kept me from considering a laptop. The iMacs are interesting and powerful, and the 5K Retina model is really nice. If you haven't seen one of those screens, you owe it to yourself to look at one. But it's an all-in-one, and it's also not really very maintainable. The only thing you can do with that is upgrade or add additional RAM. So without taking the thing apart, and it looks like a pretty intense operation, you can't do much to it. And so I started thinking, well, maybe I'll just get a Mac Pro, but oh man, they're expensive. So I kind of never even went down that road very far. So I started looking at the old Mac Pros, the classic ones, the big aluminum towers. And it's funny, there's apparently some demand for them. They are not super cheap. I mean, they're a lot less expensive than the new Mac Pro, the trash can, but they're not cheap. So I found myself looking at towers, the 2010 model towers, on eBay, and came up close a few times to pushing the button. I was looking around the $1,500 range. For about that much money, you can get one with 16 gigs of RAM and a six core processor, 3.33 gigahertz, and usually a terabyte of disk, sometimes more. Sometimes you can get a little SSD in it. But with those are the ultimate in upgradability and repairability and all that stuff. They're just made for that kind of use, but they're giant. They're really huge. And I've been sitting here, and my desk just has, I have an office, sort of a desk video back in my history if you want to look it up. I'll try to remember to put a link in. But my desk, I just have my MacBook Pro sitting on edge in this, I can't remember what it's called, a arc stand or something like that. And so I've gotten used to just this small machine here. And just I'm not sure I want to buy into a 5-year-old machine to improve on my 4-year-old machine. So seriously, I went around and around and around and around. And it finally struck me to go out to the Apple store and look at the refurbs. And if you haven't done that, if you're a Mac person or you're kind of Mac interested, it's worth a visit to the refurb store. You kind of have to look hard for it. You go to the Apple site and then go to the store, scroll to the bottom of the page, and you'll see a refurb link down there, down in the small print. So what I ended up getting, sorry, this story is turning long, ended up getting a Mac Pro. So I didn't think I would do it, but the refurb was, I think it was a 15% discount. So what I got was a Mac Pro 4-core, 3.7 gigahertz, and it's slightly upgraded. It has 16 gigabytes of RAM and a 512 gigabyte SSD. And mostly I got the slight upgrade just for the larger SSD. I didn't want to fool with that right out of the gate. Remember, I've been using a machine here that has a terabyte on it. So last weekend I spent a lot of time reorganizing disk space. Basically, I needed to get the disk in my laptop down to something less than 512 gig used. So I had to do a lot of fooling around with my Aperture library, which is like 180 gigs. So I basically figured out how to do that and got that pushed out to an external drive and then backed up the data, because now I'm frightened because it's sitting on this external drive. So I've got it on that plus a backup drive. And the Mac Pro will be coming in on Monday, and I'll be trying it out. I guess that was a really long story, but I thought maybe somebody might find it interesting, the thought process I went through on getting a new machine. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'll move off the Mac thing now. Today I went to Inglewood Camera, my favorite camera shop, which I do almost every Saturday, and I hang out and talk with the folks. It's a good crew. And a lot of times I walk out with something, and today was no different. This is a Rolleflex SL35M. It's a manual. It's got a built-in meter, but it's fully manual. Top shutter speed of 1,000th of a second. Nice lens on it. These are not particularly well thought of, but it's in such nice shape, and it's got this classic kind of 70s look to it. And it's got something that I just have to show you. It's really the reason I got it. It has the coolest focusing screen I've ever seen. So here's that. When I first held the camera up to my eye, I thought it just had a 45-degree split rangefinder. But what I discovered pretty quickly is that 45-degree angle thing is actually a rectangle. And that rectangle would kind of distort if you were out of focus. It would kind of warp the image a little bit. So it's kind of like a split image rangefinder, kind of not. Just really unusual and very effective. And then it's got a microprism collar that's really nice around it. So that's kind of what turned me on. And the camera's pretty heavy. It's a little clunky, but to me it feels good in the hand, believe it or not, even though it's kind of clunky. Plus it has a really cool finder. So anyway, maybe I'll talk more about it in a different video if people show interest. So I may put film through this, I may not. It's kind of really a shelf piece, to be honest. We'll see whether I do anything with it. Moving on from that, as I mentioned, I've got the Zeiss 55mm f1.8 comparison review. I'm going to be working on it. It'll be an interesting comparison. I have my notes sorted together on it. I think you will enjoy it a little bit. So anyway, stay tuned for that, and I'm through mumbling, and I will catch you later.